All right, Arash, so tell me a little bit about what brings you in today.
So, Dr. Linus, I have this hip pain. It limits me from doing a lot of things, especially when I squat. When I go deep into my squat, I can't really do it because of this pain.
Okay. All right, guys, let's dive into why Arash is having hip pain today. All right, what is up, you guys? Happy Tuesday. We are here in the Prehab Clinic, Lauren and Arash, doctors of physical therapy, and today, let's talk about why you may be getting that nagging pinch kind of in the front of your hip. Okay, Arash has been dealing with it, so let's break it apart a little bit. A lot of times we call that femoral acetabular impingement, okay? Big word, so we'll break it down to just FAI. That is a condition where we have within our hip joints, right, that femur bone sitting up in that acetabulum or that hip socket, and sometimes due to anatomical bony landmarks in our hip joint, we get kind of a rubbing of the bone on bone, and that it can actually pinch some of that soft tissue within the structure. So today we want to take you through a few mobilization exercises to help to work on opening up the hip joint, and then take you through some strengthening exercises to help to get you nice and strong through the hip joint.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so the first mobilization exercise I'm gonna have Arash do is what we call a pigeon stretch. Now he's actually gonna do this here at the table. He's gonna bring his leg up and across, working to open up the hip joints, and then gently leaning his chest forward just to what he can tolerate, okay? You'll feel a big stretch here in the hip joint. If you guys are trying this at home, you can do it on like your couch, your table, your counter, just don't tell your mom. Give it a try. Let us know what you feel. Comment if you guys are feeling a big stretch. I know I always feel a big stretch. Arash, what are you feeling?
Now, this is good. I feel a good stretch here. The more you bring the chest towards the leg, the more of a deep stretch you'll get. You can also rotate your body towards that leg, which will further stretch that deep hip area.
Yeah. So again, really good exercise to help to open up that hip joint and hopefully just give you a little bit more space within the hip joint. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Pop on out of that one carefully, Arash. Good. Next one we're going to do, you guys, is going to be another mobilization for your hip. So if you've got a thicker band at home, okay, you're going to wrap it high up in the groin area of that leg that is involved. So Arash is going to slide it high up in his groin. Okay, he's going to get down into an all-four position. And then from here, he wants to kind of walk his body out until he feels a little bit of a tug from the band. What this is doing is pulling his hip gently out of the socket, again, just to create a little bit more space in there. And then from here, Arash is going to rock back and forth, working through a range that feels comfortable. Okay, and important to note here, you guys, again, with FAI, a lot of times it's actually an anatomical change in bony landmarks, and so you want to make sure that you're working through a range that feels comfortable. If you notice an impairment into, hip flexion, maybe internal rotation, maybe external rotation, if it's anatomical and actually a change in that bony structure, you may not necessarily going to get a change in that range of motion. So we just want to work through a range that feels comfortable to hopefully give you a little bit more space and mobilization in the joint as tolerated. Okay, so from here, Arash is going to turn and face you all. So now he's going to do a posterior glide. So we're kind of pulling that femur head right out of the socket. And again, he's working through a range here that feels comfortable to give him a little bit more space in the hip. And he's going to work through about, 15 to 20 of these, making sure that it feels good. How's that feeling, Arash?
Good. Yeah. I feel like I can get deeper with this band. A mix of helping create more space and then also just desensitizing that area a little bit allows me to get deeper and deeper with each repetition.
Mm-hmm. And you can also kind of turn your hip in and out. So we can have Arash bring the toe in, which is going to get him into a different rotational component of the hip. He can bring the foot across, sit back into the hip a little bit more. So there's a few different directions here you guys can work on to help to open up the hip joint, but just work through what feels comfortable.
All right, guys, try those two mobility exercises and see how you feel. It's important to reassess when doing your mobility exercises for the hip, because if it's truly a morphology and the bone is impinging against the other bone, you may not improve mobility improvements as much as you may think. But also try them out and reassess, because it can actually make a difference as well. And if you're looking for more, there is a hip mobility program that we have giving you exact parameters and progressions of exercises throughout a multi-week process check this link out for more. Now, after mobility, it's really important that you strengthen the muscles around the hip to help stabilize that area. So we'll show you guys 2 exercises, one strengthening the hip flexors, the other one strengthening the hip adductors. Both muscles that are commonly not addressed when people are working out their hip muscles. So let's go into the first one.
Let's go into it.
Let's do it. So let's do it weight free at first. We'll have Lauren lie face up on here, one leg hugged into her chest, the other leg off of the edge of the table. Now, what she's going to do in this position is lift the leg that's off the table up as high as she can using her hip flexors, and then slowly lowering down as far as she feels comfortable. And she may even feel a stretch in the front of the hip here, and that's perfectly okay. Lauren, how do you feel with this one?
Feels good. It feels nice and controlled. I think a thing too here to point out, you guys, is try to keep your core engaged as well so you're not arching through the back when you're doing this one.
Exactly. And if you have a hard time doing that, the further you bring this knee up, the more you'll lock out the pelvis and make it easier. But really keep that core engaged, and you should feel the hip flexor muscles, the muscles on the front of the hip, working with this. Now, if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, you can add some load. Here we have a kettlebell. You can use a band stabilized towards the floor if you want, but we'll have Lauren put her foot in this kettlebell here. And then from here, she's gonna lift her leg up. This is a lot more challenging, guys. And then slowly lower. This is the key here, to control that descending part of the movement. And then pull back up and slowly lower using your core and hip flexors. And then I'll take that load from you here, Lauren. Good. So that was exercise 1 for the hip flexors. Now, exercise 2 is addressing the adductors, or the inner thigh muscles here. Now, we'll have Lauren start in a half kneeling position, one leg on the slider, and the leg that's on the slider is going to slide out towards me as far as she feels comfortable, and then she'll pull back into the starting position, and then slowly repeat back and forth. Now, she'll lean onto this leg as much as she feels comfortable. The more you load this leg that's sliding out, the more you're going to have to use those adductors to pull back up into the starting position. And Lauren, how do you feel with this one?
It's hard.
It's
I
hard.
feel my adductors working.
It's a lot harder than it looks. And the other leg is going to have to go into abduction too the more you load onto this leg. And if you want to go through even more range of motion, let's have you stand up, Lauren, and do the same thing. Now in this standing position, Lauren can even accept more load onto this leg that's coming out as she pushes out further and further. And how do you feel there, Lauren?
It's harder. And standing, you guys, you'll definitely feel like you can get a little bit more weight onto that leg you're sliding. So take your time pulling up. Really make sure you're making those adductor muscles work.
And that's good.
Okay.
And with both of these two, make sure you're working within range of motions that are comfortable for you. With FAI, you get a pinch in certain movements, but you want to make sure they're comfortable even on the other leg. When you're sliding out, this opposite leg is going to go into hip flexion. So just move within your comfort and don't push too much into that painful position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like Arash was saying, you guys, give these a try. Let us know what you think. Try that one. Let me know how much you feel your adductor working. Comment below. All right, you guys. Go ahead, subscribe, like. If you like Arash's tan, go ahead, comment on that. Otherwise, we will plan on seeing you guys next Tuesday.
See you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. What are we doing again? I'm just saying I have hip pain.